Hi, this is Debbie. Welcome back to Cheyenne Wyoming Urban Gardener. And what I'm doing right now is I'm getting ready for some fall planting. So I'm already starting my plants for the fall season because we have a very, very short fall here. So we more grow towards the end of summer into fall and what little bit of fall we get. And it's all going to be like brassicas and lettuces and things like that. So what I'm planting right now is I did go ahead and order some seed for some Savoy cabbage. I've always loved Savoy cabbage, so I wanted to grow some. I grew some many years ago when I was still living with my parents, and we had a huge garden then, probably about a quarter of an acre size garden. I mean, it was just absolutely huge, at least to me. Not really huge to a whole lot of other people, but originally I was from East Tennessee. And we had very humid, hot weather. In the summer, it could very easily be 98 degrees and 98% humidity. Sometimes even into the hundreds with 98% humidity. You would just feel like that you were drenched with sweat every single day. And that's just how you dealt with it. And so you would usually wait until in the evenings or get out really early in the morning, 4:30, 5 o'clock in the morning when it was just breaking daylight, to get out and work in your gardens. So anyway, I just went ahead and put about 3 seeds in each one of these little holes here, just basically a divot. You want to plant your cabbage seeds about a 1/2 inch down, and I'm just covering those up now, and I'll give them a good soak here in a moment. So just getting those all covered up, and then I will be sitting them in the growing room for a few days, and then I will sit them outside once they start coming up. I actually do not do like I do in the wintertime. In the wintertime, I, especially like in February and March when I start my seeds, I will leave them in the growing room the entire time. I will not take them outside until the temperatures start warming up and sort of acclimate them to the weather, but I don't always do that. Sometimes I just take them out directly and just plant them outside, and I've not had any issues with my brassicas doing that. I do have some issues with squash sometimes when I plant them out, transplant them, but it's regardless of whether I acclimate them to outside or not. Sometimes it's just like that. Sometimes they're just better to plant the seeds in warmer conditions, and like the first week of June for us in Wyoming, or in my particular area in Cheyenne, Wyoming. And the garden zones in Cheyenne, Wyoming can be anywhere from all the way down to like 4A, 4B, all the way up to 7A, 7B, depending on where you are. There's a very, very, very small area closer around the Wind River Reservation area that has the higher garden zones, and more towards Utah, I guess. From what I remember looking at on the map. The rest of us are in colder garden zones, and we're in 5A, 5B. So that is the Savoy cabbage that I've went ahead and started, and we'll go outside and take a little look at the garden. It's getting ready to rain outside, and it is about 2:30 p.m. On July 4th. So happy Independence Day, everyone. Happy July 4th. And we will see you in just a moment outside. In the past couple of videos, I mentioned that I had went ahead and harvested my radishes and then planted some more lettuce over here in one of my galvanized steel containers. And you can see all of our little lettuce has came up. This is just basically a gourmet blend of lettuce, so there'll be a whole bunch of different types in here. And today we went ahead and harvested some of the leaves off of our lettuce on the other side, and it has started to get a little bit bitter, probably because of the heat, the temperatures, and just the fact that it's been out here for quite a while. It was one of the first things that I planted out here in a container. So more than likely, if it doesn't, I did go ahead and just leave it in and let some of the smaller leaves come on, and if it doesn't appear to be any different or sweeter, then we will go ahead and get those pulled up and plant some more lettuce in here. And I believe this was a Great Lakes variety as well as the black-seeded Simpson. We have both in here. And I'm going to go ahead and replant my grandson's little container because he has some lettuce in there as well. It was the same varieties, and I'm going to go ahead and get those removed and replant there. I still haven't planted anything in this longer container, but I do have some parsley that we have reseeded in this one that I've talked about in a couple of the past videos. And the butter dish squash just continues to keep growing. Today it's really put on quite a lot of growth, just in today alone, because we had temperatures today almost at 90 degrees Fahrenheit, and we're supposed to in the next couple of days hit 95. And that'll put a little stress on this garden, especially on the brassicas and the lettuces, but they should be just fine. We haven't had a whole lot of things go to bolt except for a few mustard plants that were in some mixes of lettuces. Otherwise, most of it is still just now coming up and getting some of their second, third, and fourth leaves, because we only planted that a couple of weeks ago. So anyway, the nasturtiums are loving the temperatures and the heat. They are just beginning to explode in here. And I did have another one pop up last night right there. So now altogether we have 5 through here. And I did plant some seeds back here in the back that I had mentioned previously. And I haven't seen those come up yet. And it just may be that it's just too shady back here. But I'm happy to have at least 5 in here, and those will continue to grow and spread and bloom and all that. And I think this is the Empress variety, which is a red nasturtium, and I do have some orange nasturtiums as well. I kind of just mixed them all together. All of our beans are still just growing like crazy. These are the rattlesnake pole beans and the Kentucky Wonder pole beans, as well as I have a couple of rows of Royal Burgundy beans that are in here, and they're a bush variety. The rest of them are all pole variety of beans. But because of not having that many rows of corn here, we only have 5 short rows because that's all the area that I have. They do continue to grow and flourish because they still get plenty of light. And this again is an early variety of corn. It's an early sun glow hybrid, so it doesn't get very tall anyway. It'll only reach to about 4 to 4.5 feet tall. Right now it's about 2.5 feet, depending on which one you're looking at. And it'll probably start to tassel pretty soon. So we're looking at corn sometime towards the end of August, most likely. A lot of our Kennebec potatoes are starting to bloom at this point. So at this point afterwards, after they finish blooming, that's when we will have potatoes in the ground, and they'll just keep continuing to get bigger. However, the vines will start to die soon after the blooms fall off, so I'm not really sure how long the blooms will remain on. Last year they actually remained on quite a while. And the vines on these didn't start dying back really at all. Towards September, the vines were still nice and green and healthy, and I planted these actually a little bit later than I did last season. So I'm hoping that they will start to die back the way they're supposed to, because I would really like to have some stored potatoes this season, obviously, because of the prices. Just yesterday I had to go to Sam's Club and pick up quite a few things, and a couple of grocery stores. And I was telling my partner, I said, you know, when you go in the grocery store now, you just really want to cry. There were gallons of milk that were $4.50, $5, and when I left East Tennessee back in 2015 and came here, I know that the gallons of milk then were almost $5. So it's I haven't really checked to see, but I wonder what gallons of milk in East Tennessee would be right now. I haven't asked my daughter. I've got my younger daughter still living in Chattanooga, so it might be something to ask her and see what the prices are. But altogether, meat and everything else was just astronomically high. And fortunately, I can still get some things on clearance prices or reduced prices, so that really helps out with stocking the pantry and stocking the chest freezers with meat and things like that. So, and we're actually considering buying a half cow or even a half buffalo to put away in the freezer. So we're talking about that right now, and considering that, and we may make the investment to go ahead and purchase another freezer. So that's something that we may look forward to in the future. And of course, I'll keep everybody posted if we do decide to do that or if we do not. So anyway, everything doing so amazing out here in the garden. Even our radishes are starting to really put on some size now. I'm not sure if they're starting to bulb up. It looks like some of them may be, but we will find out. I've not had a very good radish season so far. They just seem to want to bolt pretty quickly. So it may be better to plant them more towards fall. We'll find out. But anyway, potatoes looking absolutely amazing. And this is my grandson's little garden area, his little grow bags, if you will. And he's got loads and loads of lettuce himself. This is a sweet mesclun. And then he has some lemon drop basil. All of his lemon drop basil came up like crazy. And then he has some flowers in here and a couple of broccoli plants that I had given him earlier in the season. And they're really beginning to start to think about wanting to head up now. And his little tomato plant in there, it's still kind of smaller than some of my others, but it does have some tomatoes on it. So it looks like it's going to actually produce quite a bit of tomatoes. It's a yellow pear variety. And that was his lettuce that we went ahead and harvested most of this evening. And I'm going to go ahead and get him some more seeds in there planted so we can look at that. And I actually planted him a couple of cucumbers in there, which are just now starting to get their third leaf on. And he's got a couple of lemon drop basils in that area as well, and a few radishes, and then his little pepper plant that I gave him that had been broken. And he actually has now two little main stems on it, so it's going to start blooming and producing pretty soon. And then of course here is the main section of the garden, and still just flourishing like crazy. I got in here again today and started trimming off some more of the lower leaves and limbs of the tomato plants because they were just really getting a lot of bushiness around the base of the plants, touching the ground. So you don't want that because that can cause disease and blight. So I came in here and took a lot of the lower leaves off. And then of course when you come in your videoing, you can always see another one that needs it. But we do have tomatillos starting to sit on our tomatillo plants. They were blooming there for a while, and we've just had so many pollinators and things going on that they've definitely started sitting on actual fruit. We did have a red curry squash bloom today. You can see it way out there. It's the end of the row. And it went ahead and bloomed today, and I think it's a male flower. So female flowers are still need to come on in order for it to be pollinated. And again, female flowers have a little bit of a pumpkin or squash attached to it, and then the flower. So then you would, if you need to hand pollinate, you would take the male flower like that one, and if you had a female flower, you can go in and either peel back the petals and then pollinate it that way by touching the stamen to the stamen and just kind of swishing it around and making sure you get all the inner parts of that flower. Or you can take a paintbrush or even a toothbrush and use that to go ahead and pollinate it, or even a paintbrush, a little artist paintbrush. All of our beans are blooming, at least the bush beans that are in here. They're definitely putting on some size, plus they are blooming. They're even trying to put little runners on, even though they're a bush bean variety. And our half runners are putting their runners on as well, so they'll start climbing the trellis pretty soon. And even our little Japanese yard longs, they've got runners on them, even as small as they are, and they are the same variety as this one here. So we've got the Japanese yard longs here that I had planted not too long ago, and then we have them over here too. And these are actually definitely putting on runners and very healthy plants. So got a lot of that going on in here, as well as the Kentucky Wonder pole beans putting on runners. And even the rattlesnake pole beans are now considering putting on runners as well. And I'm sure this week, like I was mentioning in the past video, with the heat coming up this week, I am sure that it's going to really prompt them to take off. So that's going to be something to look forward to. We've got a few cucumbers that are planted underneath the trellises here, and they will climb the trellises once they start getting their runners on. But they are starting to get their second and third leaves now. So it won't be long before they'll actually get a lot bigger and start putting on their runners. And the clematis had bloomed. This one is absolutely beautiful, and it's just one that I left in the garden that was here originally when we moved in. And we've got a sunflower there in the back that's just continuing to get huge. I'm not even sure of the variety because I didn't plant that one. It actually just came up. So I've got it staked and have it tied because we've had massive amounts of wind this season, and I think all over the country has been the same situation of having a lot of wind going on. So I've had to tie it and stake it, and I'm probably going to have to end up doing that with most of my sunflowers as well, unless they're a shorter variety, which I do have many mixtures of different sunflowers this season, not just the huge ones, but I did plant some more of the Russian mammoth sunflowers today, as well as incredible sunflowers and some gray stripe sunflowers, so I can have kind of a staggered time of bloom, so that we will have a little bit of that going on, hopefully, crossing fingers, because we do have a very short growing season. A lot of the tomatoes are blooming, so they are setting fruit and blooming. I've noticed a couple of tomatoes here and there throughout that have started up so far. Even the giant ox hearts are really taking off really well. They're actually surpassing my super sauce tomatoes, which they don't really get that tall anyway. They get about 4 to 4.5 feet tall will be the max for them, because they take some of the properties from the Roma variety that they are crossed from. But they are indeterminate tomatoes, so they'll have loads and loads of fruit and keep producing throughout the season, rather than just a determinate variety which only has a certain amount of fruit and then they're done. Onions, I did go ahead and check one of the onions to see if we are bulbing up, and they are. You can see a nice big bulb right there. A lot of them are still small, so they'll still have to come on, but they are bulbing up, which I'm very happy with. And I may come in here and actually take some more of the dirt away from each one of the onion plants, and I'd have 215 to go through. But the tops on them are just massive at this point and starting to kind of just sprawl everywhere. But they'll still continue to get bulbs on them. I actually noticed another one is bulbing up pretty well too down there. So definitely going to have some onions this season. I'm not sure how big they will get, but anything is good. Even if they didn't do anything at all, we can still have green onions to work with. So loads of that food in here. Our calendula kind of escaped where it was supposed to be and has started coming up where the onions are, and even one of them is getting ready to bloom. So they've kind of just escaped their area, and I might have to come in here and pull those out because they could take some energy away from the onions, which I don't want to happen. So unfortunately I may have to sacrifice some, and maybe I can put them in a pot. I'm not sure how they would do on transplant, but we'll find out. My roses are just blooming like crazy. My red one is in full bloom. There's still a few more that could bloom, and it'll continue to bloom throughout the season. However, it's just having a massive amount of blooms already. In fact, they only bloom for a short time before they start dropping petals, which is starting to happen. And recently, when I was giving out a load of plants to a Facebook group that I had met up with, I did get someone who gave me a comfrey, which I have left in the pot so far, but I'm going to go ahead and transplant it into a larger pot, and we're going to try to keep it contained because we don't really want it taking over in the garden. So that is where we're keeping the comfrey at the moment, but we will go ahead and get that transplanted here very soon. I did plant a lot of flower seeds in here. I've got some cosmos and some other varieties of flowers in here, bachelor's buttons and things like that, and those are all coming up. It's kind of all the little plants you see in here, plus some weeds that I've got to get in here and figure out which is which and thin out. And we have some more nasturtium back here, and they're all up or coming up, and those are the orange variety. So we'll have that, and then we've got some more bachelor buttons right through here in a row, and those are all up. And I did notice that my artichokes today are putting on some more leaves on top of what they already have, and the leaves are starting to get pretty large. So those will continue, and hopefully we'll have some artichokes this season. I don't know. We'll find out because we've got a shorter season than we had last season because I had an earlier start. So loads of that going on, and the leeks that I had planted are actually getting bigger. They're still not very big, and they will take a long growing season. So I'm not real sure that they'll be ready this season. They may have to overwinter, but we do have some leeks in here that are doing what they're supposed to do. And looks like we have something that broke the fence over here, so I'll need to fix that. Probably the lawnmower, because he mowed today. Peas are beginning to bloom like crazy. So they did make it to about 3 feet tall with some of them, because these are 48-inch trellises. The white ones are 48-inch and the other ones are 36-inch. And they're spilling out over the top in some areas there. So they did reach about 3 feet. They'll continue to get taller, I'm assuming, even though they are blooming now. So when they are blooming, they're setting peas on there. And I haven't seen any peas yet, but I'm pretty sure that they'll be coming along very shortly. When they bloom, it doesn't take very long at all before peas start to set. And again, I have another row of peas in here, which are just now starting to come up, that I had just planted all along through here. I can just see the very tip tops of them starting to come up. And then I do have another row planted between the tall row and the fence, or the trellis. So we have more in there that are coming up. They're a couple inches tall now, as well as on the other side on this section. And then we have another row through here that are actually already starting to put their runners on. And they're only about 2 weeks old, so it only takes a very short amount of time before peas come up, and they're doing what they're supposed to do. So we will be looking forward to having a lot of peas. We've got 6 rows in there, and I will be continuing to plant probably until at least the 15th of July. Because again, we have a short season and they may not be ready by the time snow flies, and once the snow hits, even though peas are pretty cold hardy, they may not last it. Lettuce back in the back, you can see we've got one bunch that had escaped, doing great, and all of the lettuce back there. And we've got more that's coming up back there to replace some that we'd already harvested. And squash are doing amazing. We transplanted a couple of them, which look kind of sad, but they will pick up and grow. They've actually noticed that they perked up in the center section even after I had went ahead and transplanted them, so they will be fine. And this one right here. So it was just basically to fill out the row because we had a couple of them didn't come up. And I noticed that we do have a new one coming up over in this section right there. So we will have some more filled in there. And then our row of collards is still doing amazing. They just came up. I only planted them about 6 days ago. And they come up very, very quickly, very thickly. So I'm going to have to get in here and thin some of them. And then I had a few that didn't come up in the middle section. So I'm going to go ahead and transplant some that I pull out of the other section and put it into that section. And then just thin them in general. And these red curry squash, of course, they were planted a couple of weeks after the other ones that are blooming, but they are now starting to get runners already. A couple of them are just now coming up that were fill-ins for ones that did not come up. And those are up, and it will not take them very long to catch up to the others. And our peppers that had gotten dumped and mixed up, so we don't really know which peppers that we are growing, are definitely getting big now. They're starting to put on some size. We did lose one right here that got clipped off, I think, by an ant. And the rest of them are doing great and definitely starting to pick up on size. So it will not be any time at all before they will catch up to the ones that I purchased. And those are all still doing amazing. We did get one that was broken off, and I thought that it had died, but it didn't. It actually started coming back. So it should do the 2 liters instead of just 1. So then it'll have more fruit on it, I suppose. At least that's what is told. I've not experienced that, so we'll find out. Cabbages are still heading up, doing amazing. And I did lose, unfortunately, 1 broccoli plant last night, and it was just that we had so much rain and so much wind yesterday that it blew it over and snapped it off even with the ground. So I had to unfortunately pull that one out, and I threw a couple of seeds in that I had left. I only had 4 broccoli seeds remaining for this season. So I'm going to have to get some broccoli seeds. So I went ahead and threw those in the ground, and hopefully those will come up and replace the broccoli that I lost, but it'll be very, very much behind the other broccoli here. I did have some beets that I planted between each of the peppers. Those are just starting to come up, and it's very difficult to see them on camera, so I'll show you once they start getting a little bit more size on them. But I did plant gold beets and Jupiter beets between each one of the pepper plants just to have some more space used. And I also planted them between the celery. I did get in here today and clip off some of the dead leaves off of the celery on the outer edges, and just some really spindly stalks that had came out, because the center sections are definitely, even the one that I thought was going to die off, they're all doing wonderfully, amazingly, and they have nice big stalks that are coming on them now. So I've got 15 of those in there. Cauliflower doing amazing. Definitely putting on more size for them. And again, the broccoli and the rest of the cabbage are doing amazing as well. Even my red cabbages are starting to form some little center head section through there. And we did get some fill-in seed between the red cabbages because there's just a lot of space there. So we went ahead and put in some more red cabbage seed, which is up. It's just really, really small right now. And those will start filling out pretty quickly. And there's that same little bird again in the last video out here in the garden, and she's just basically going through and getting some gravel so she can cut her food up in her craw. So there she is. They're getting so used to me now, they just basically, sometimes they'll be right at my feet, but she's just a little sparrow. And we have our potatoes are still doing great. These are the Yukon Golds. Let me back up a little bit and you can see those a little better. But starting to bloom, and just are actually bigger than the Kennebec potatoes right now. They just have some massive size on them. They took a long time to get started, but once they got started, it was no time at all that they just took off and started blooming like crazy. Same thing with our sage. Our sage kind of sat there for a while and was just kind of small, and now it's just taken off like crazy, as well as our oregano is taken off. And rosemary. The rosemary's pretty much about the same size as it was, and we have some more planted because this one is a couple of years old now. So we went ahead and started some more just to kind of take the place of that one. Our hibiscus is still blooming like crazy. Dill is getting ready to bloom, so we will probably get that harvested here pretty soon and get some more seeds planted so those can get started. Geraniums are really starting to fill out in color. We've got a lot of stalks up with blooms getting ready to start, and our dianthus looking great. All of our parsley looking amazing, and all of our carrots are definitely filling out now. So I am still looking at it and going maybe a little bit longer before I start thinning, just to see which ones look the strongest. And then of course all of our Shin Carota carrots are up. And then I need to get in here and do some more weeding. I had weeded these, but now I need to do it again. And we have more lettuce coming up back here in the lettuce bed. Of course, we have some that we can pull from while we're waiting on the others to get some size on them. But we did plant all kinds of varieties. Different lettuces in here, mostly a red marvel, which is something that I want to check out. And we've got some romaine lettuce in here that I will be separating out once we harvest most of the other lettuce. And just so we get some good size on it. And our sweet potato experiment, it is rooted in, and we will be looking for slips on that soon. So everything is doing great. Beets, turnips, all of that. Pumpkins looking amazing. Even the north side looking amazing. And we did get in and separate the bok choy out and mound up around each of the bok choy, which are getting some size on them now. So we've got those thinned out and some of that fixed up. So anyway, like, subscribe, hit the notification bell for notices on new videos as they come out, and we shall see you in the next one.